Good morning and welcome to Focus Today. Steve Johnson with you and Dr. Joel Klein. Good to have you back. It's been a little while since you've been here, but great to have you back from Ventana Wellness. Right there in the heart of Medford. And we're going to be talking about a subject that you could have been diagnosed with this. You might have just heard a lot about it, but I think there are a lot of misconceptions, and we're going to talk about gluten and celiac disease and all of those things that are kind of related to that. Let me just ask you, are you seeing a rise in patients who seem to have this particular problem? And I want to talk about the problem more in depth, but are you seeing an increase?
Oh, very clearly.
Okay, yes. Let's get down to the basics. When we talk about gluten and problems that people have with gluten, what is gluten to begin with? Because it's in a lot of our foods, isn't it?
It's a protein. It's in a lot of places, but the most common place is in a lot of the larger cereal grains. So wheat is the most common source. A lot of the other cereal grains that can have it are barley, rye, even the health food store grains like spelt, that's a cousin of wheat, also have gluten. So it's a protein that's actually in the grain itself.
So we're finding it in bread, in spaghetti,
anything made with flour, because we pay a lot to grow a lot of wheat that goes all over the world, and they have to do something with all the surplus.
And this isn't something that's added in. This is just something that is a part of that whole wheat aspect, right?
For the most part. Occasionally it's added in. I still haven't figured out why it's in soy sauce, unless you get gluten-free tamari, but somehow there's gluten in there, and it's added into some other foods.
Yeah, 'cause I was thinking like MSG. They'll say MSG free if you don't like the flavor of that and whatever, and it's like, why did they add it in? Because you can add MSG in, but this is different.
Right, that's different.
Right? Yeah. But so soy sauce has gluten in it.
Well, unless it says gluten-free. Okay. I know.
All right. And now, related to gluten is celiac disease that people have been diagnosed with. What actually is that? Because 10 years ago, I don't know if anyone had really heard of it.
Well, this is the biggest issue. So it was first figured, it was seen frequently. Children were dying of this on a regular basis, particularly in Europe. And a pediatrician, either from Belgium or the Netherlands, I never remember which, figured out after World War II, because they didn't see any kids dying of celiac disease during the war. And then all of a sudden the war was over, and they started seeing kids dying of celiac. Because celiac is based on a Greek term meaning in the intestines. So they didn't know what caused it.
Okay.
He figured out because it was the bread was rationed, and that it was wheat that was doing it. Now, it was thought that this occurred in 1 in 3 to 5,000 people, which is why you didn't hear a lot about it. But researchers at my medical school actually published an article in Scientific American in 2009 where they tested 13,000 healthy people for the blood test. And we'll talk about that's actually probably only the tip of the iceberg of the people who suffer from symptoms, or people who have a positive blood test. And even that they found in 1 in 133 healthy people, not 1 in 3 to 5,000.
So was that doctor right, that because bread was rationed in World War II, that's probably why they didn't have the problem that they had after?
Exactly, yes.
So it was...
Yes, because he figured out because the bread was rationed, people weren't eating it that much, and they didn't see any problems until the restrictions were lifted. And then around 1947 or so, he kind of put the picture together and realized that it was the bread that was doing this.
Did they, at that point then, start taking people off of bread who seem to have celiac disease?
Yes.
I mean, was there an effort to do that?
Right. They figured out. He figured out it was wheat, and again, it was a small percentage of people, but clearly, and children in particular, that had these gastrointestinal symptoms that they couldn't explain, but they were violently ill, I should say, or certainly they were very ill. They would get even bloody diarrhea. I mean, these were sick people, and that was one of the first things they figured out. All right, let's get that out of there.
And they knew that it was somehow related to that whole sequence. Boy, I'll tell you, without the rationing, they may not have figured that out for a while.
Well, it would have taken a longer period of time, right?
All right, you said that in your own practice you're seeing more people who have this particular problem. Why are we seeing more people diagnosed with this?
Well, this is the $64,000 question. One of the things is there's a spectrum. The people with true celiac disease, number one, you can get they actually have genetic predisposition. So there are genes that can actually be looked for on blood tests now. They are usually more sicker people that any gluten really makes them ill. What we're seeing is a large spectrum of people who now may not test positive for either the antibody in their blood or not have the gene, yet they still clearly feel a lot better when they don't eat gluten. So we're calling those people gluten intolerant. And my suspicion is it is a perfect storm of what's happened to the health of our gastrointestinal tracts over the past 50 years with high processed food diets, exposure to antibiotics, that are disturbing the intestinal environment in a way to make it more reactive to foods. And it may also relate to the monocultures of wheat, even beyond the GMO issue, that are now being used in agriculture may actually be these subspecies that they haven't looked at it as much, seem to be more prone to producing this problem, because people who can eat bread in Europe will come to the United States and say, I can eat it in Europe, but I can't eat your stuff.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so there's still it still has to be worked out, but there seems to be multiple factors involved.
You know, and I remember just seeing a recent article about one of the doctors saying that he thinks that we are becoming an an intolerant society to antibiotics. We've given so much out now that we have nowhere to go, and the different strains have adapted to it and all the rest. So this sounds like this would be tied in. With
indirectly. It's a more complicated story, but what I find is that the patterns of imbalance in the gut related to giving people antibiotics, so that the normal healthy environment of good bacteria, which we're now, even the gastroenterologists are coming around to realizing that probiotics, healthy bacteria supplements, are beneficial for people. They've been doing this in India for 5,000 years by making yogurt fresh every night and eating it the next day. But it seems that this disturbed environment in the gut, in my clinical experience, is much more prone to producing food allergies, with gluten being number one on the list. Dairy, corn, and soy are also not uncommon.
You know, and it makes me wonder, you mentioned yogurt. I've seen some that talk about having active cultures in it and all the rest, and that may be a part of this.
Part of it. Well, you can't make yogurt without active cultures. So that's kind of, if you're really making yogurt. So that's a marketing ploy. The thing is that by the time you get it, the bacterial count is much lower. It can be beneficial for people. Now they're using, of course, these special strains of bacteria that they're putting in some of these special yogurts that they're advertising that way. But you don't get nearly the benefit of making your own, but making your own is a lot more of a pain.
All right, let's talk a little bit about people who may think they are gluten intolerant and the testing for all of that. Is this pretty involved?
No, because part of it is, number one, even half of people with diagnosable celiac disease have no stomach symptoms.
Oh, really?
But they have
what are their symptoms?
They have inflammatory problems. They may have arthritis. They may be asthma. Can be all, I would say, somebody who has a whole list of symptoms and the doctors can't find anything wrong. A lot of times it's going to be a food allergy reaction. You can get the testing. My experience is that for every positive blood tester, I will find multiple people whose blood tests are negative for celiac disease and they still feel better when they stop it. So the simple test is to not eat it 3-4 weeks. And most people will notice an improvement in whatever the symptoms are. And then particularly after being off it for a few weeks, if they reintroduce it back, the feedback is usually pretty dramatic. Like that evening, the next day, they will feel poorly. They'll feel achy all over, or headaches, or stomach symptoms, or any number of different problems.
And when you say not go on it, you're talking about the food that has gluten in it, right? Now, but that's hard, isn't that, here in the United States? I mean,
if you buy things that the food companies make, yes. If you buy the things that God made, no. So there's
naturally and all.
Yeah, there's no gluten in vegetables.
Okay.
These are all in flour products, and again, it's even easier now. You can get gluten-free anywhere. Obviously, even the regular stores, or certainly the health food stores and these kind of places, all have gluten-free products.
And I've wondered about that, because I've seen a gluten-free raisin toast, or raisin bread, which I like raisin bread. And I'm wondering, is it really though? I mean, is there much oversight to all of this?
They're supposedly not able to say gluten-free unless it truly is gluten-free. So these things are going to be things made with rice flour. And other things, because rice does not have gluten, so a lot of times it will be made with that.
Oh, that's interesting. So rice doesn't, but potatoes would, and so you have to.
No,
potatoes don't.
No real vegetables have gluten like that.
So mostly bread. Wheat.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the heavier beans, I have to go research that. Maybe sometimes, but they're more starchy. But no, it's the grains.
Okay.
Rice does not. Oats don't naturally have gluten, but they get contaminated where they're processed. So if you can now get gluten-free oats, or it turns out the steel-cut Irish style, what people also are processed in different facilities, so they also don't have gluten.
This is one of those things almost where you need to have a checklist, I think, to go in and make sure that you don't have it, because as you said, you may think it doesn't have it, but the store that it or the manufacturing plant it was in could have contaminated it from that standpoint. When people find that they are sensitive, is it something that comes on slowly, or is it like immediate from your experience?
Oh, it can be very insidious. Now, for some people, again, I think with the people who have the genetic predisposition, they've had problems with digestive issues all their life and nobody's been able to figure it out. So it's been labeled as irritable bowel or some other type of problem. So that's more insidious. I think it's not common. I've had people who had, after heavy courses of antibiotics for a severe infection, all of a sudden became sensitive. More commonly, it's kind of insidious and kind of sneaks up on people over time.
So somebody could be fine all their life, and as they get older, they become sensitive towards gluten?
That's my experience. Those are going to be the people who are more like gluten intolerant. They don't have the genetic predisposition, but because of issues through life, have slowly developed conditions in their GI tract where they're now sensitive to it.
So do you find you have a lot of older patients who are coming in, or are they younger?
Oh, no, mostly older.
They are, okay. Because if they're younger, it's probably genetic. Would that be accurate?
Can be, although the way we treat our children now, many of our children have been exposed to huge doses of antibiotics starting in early childhood. So they've had digestive problems like since the age of 5, and it could have even started back then, and still not necessarily be a genetic issue.
Okay. All right, we're going to be talking about how do you test for gluten intolerance anyway? How do you go about doing that? Our guest is Dr. Joel Klein with Ventana Wellness, and we'll be back with more of our discussion about all things gluten and celiac disease right here on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Polina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today. Steve Johnson here with you, and Dr. Joel Klein from Ventana Wellness, and we're talking about celiac disease and gluten intolerance and what it's all about anyway. Because if you're like me, you've had a whole lot of questions about just what is this whole thing gluten? Didn't hear about it when I was a kid, hearing a lot about it now, and as you said, Doctor, you're seeing more patients coming in that you're identifying as having some sort of a gluten kind of a problem. Right. Let me ask you that once you have found out that they may have this problem, you have to do some testing. How involved is this?
Not very. Some people, it all depends on if they have mild symptoms. I sometimes won't do the testing. The only testing you can do is for for antibodies or for the genes that predispose people. And I would say that can be important, but that is, in my experience, actually the minority of patients who actually have the real genetic issue. There's a much larger degree of people who have a sensitivity that the only way you really find out, like I said, is to do an elimination diet. You stop it for a period of time, see how your body does, then reintroduce it and see if you have a reaction. Is really the only definitive test for it, because there may be all kinds of other things that are going on in there appear to be that we just don't have tests for at this point.
So it's not like a checklist necessarily until you actually use the person as the example.
You do the person as an experiment of themselves.
Yeah, and again, it's focusing on wheat, on grains, you said, right?
Predominantly,
that's
right.
Where that is. So you eliminate them completely and then slowly reintroduce? Is that the idea?
Yes, but it depends on the problem. I won't have them necessarily eliminate all grains, just the ones that contain gluten.
Now, we were talking about an aspect of related problems to that. I mean, it sounds to me like a person could be diagnosed with other problems that are really gluten and celiac related.
Right.
But they're kind of misdiagnosed because there's a whole range of physical problems, maladies they can have, right?
All these different inflammatory problems. People can actually not have stomach problems. As I said, even half of people with diagnosable celiac disease don't have gastrointestinal symptoms.
So what might they have?
I will see people down the list: asthma, eczema, migraines, arthritis, any autoimmune disease may be related to gluten. In fact, that was the gist of the article in Scientific American, was the actual mechanism of how gluten would be causing this inflammation that's associated with autoimmune and inflammatory problems. Women with hormonal or menstrual issues, particularly going back, and even if they're teenagers, with bad cramps or cysts or these types of things, a lot of times gluten can be related. Even endometriosis, gluten or these food allergies can be playing some part in.
I can see where somebody who has an asthma or arthritis problem, they wouldn't even think of celiac disease. I mean, again, it's not related to their stomach, but so they could be, I suppose, diagnosed with, for years, being treated for all sorts of other things.
They can see the rheumatologist for the joint problems. They can see the pulmonologist or allergist for their asthma. They may be seeing the dermatologist for their eczema, and all of these different things all actually related to the same thing.
Once a person finds that they are sensitive to gluten, is there a cure for them, or do they have to live with this?
There's not really a cure. Now, again, the people with true celiac, usually they just have to be careful the rest of their lives. But there's a spectrum to it, and that some of these people who are gluten intolerant because of, let's say, antibiotic histories and other things, a lot of times we can help use naturopathic type of remedies to rehabilitate their gastrointestinal tract so that over time they are able to eat it, but never in the amount that they were before. They'll find out maybe, okay, I can do this much and I'm okay, but if I do this much, not, or I can do it once or twice a week, but any more than that, and I get symptoms. So they're never typically able to eat it with impunity without suffering some sort of consequences, but they find they can get away with little bits once in a while. And quite frankly, a lot of the times, once they've gotten to that point, they don't really want it anyway because they feel so much better. Their body has stopped craving it.
I know you're a person who doesn't necessarily want to put a person on drugs, you know, as a first recourse. You want to find out these things. Right. Are there drugs, though, that can also help them that they have to keep taking?
No. The drugs, well, there are drugs that can help suppress symptoms. So if they have irritable bowel or these other types of things, but that's all they're doing is treating symptoms. There are no drugs that will actually treat the condition.
Okay. Are there a lot of people that you know that are on those kinds of drugs?
Sure. Oh, yeah, people being diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome for any number of different things and giving all these different medicines, or being put on acid blockers for indigestion. And all of these things potentially could have a food allergy relationship.
All right, you know, this sounds like if somebody has a problem with gluten and they get off and they feel better, shouldn't we all be doing that? I mean, how do you approach that?
Not necessarily.
Aspect? Okay.
I think somebody who feels fine really probably doesn't have an issue. If you don't really, people who feel healthy, this is not so that gluten is not inherently dangerous. But what it is, it's an extremely common allergen, what we would call it, or trigger for many, many people. People without any health problems really don't need to go looking for stopping gluten just because it might be healthier, because I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue for them.
So you're not making grains out to be bad necessarily for everybody. It's just people who have a sensitivity.
It's just what we've done with them. Yeah.
Well, it makes me wonder, we're not really moving away from processed foods, are we, generally speaking? In fact,
hardly.
We're moving more towards it, aren't we?
Sure.
So you're expecting this to be more of a problem?
Well, yeah, possibly? Well, yes, and because not so much in the foods related. I think we've probably gotten to where we're going to get to with regards to the foods. I can't know that they would do much more with the foods than they've already done. But as people's gastrointestinal tracts become more and more damaged by modern life, then we're going to be, seeing even more and more of these very potentially.
Do organic foods play a role in this at all, or is that a different issue?
That would be a different issue, because, the organic issue would have to do, obviously, with things like pesticides and the like, but also with the nutrition in the plant. We don't have time to go into it, but the organically grown vegetables will have more of these phytonutrients that are very healthy for us, because all of those plant products that are healthy for us are produced by the plant for defense. And if all the stresses have been taken away from the plant, with pesticides and everything else, the plant doesn't have any need to produce those chemicals. But that's a different issue.
We might have somebody who's watching and listening to this saying, you know what, I think you're talking about something I might have, but where do I actually start to try to pull back on some of the foods that I'm eating that could be causing this problem? and then move towards introducing them to see if, in fact, if I do feel bad. Do you suggest they just stop eating bread, for example?
Well, it all depends.
What do you suggest?
There's two ways to do it. I tell people, if you really want to get the answer as quickly as possible and efficiently as you can, you do it 100% for 3 to 4 weeks. I don't think, it may take a little bit of planning. That's not that difficult. The problem is let's say you only do bread. If you get better, great. But if you don't, then we don't know, well, it's because we're barking up the wrong tree altogether, or it's that you just need to do more. So the process can take months that way.
So you're saying a doctor should be involved in this to...
Not necessarily.
So what do you suggest they do then?
If they want to go to the website celiac.com, which is for celiac patients. There's more information there than anybody can digest. It'll give them the list of foods, and they plan out for themselves how to shop, and they go, and eliminate gluten from the diet as best they can for, like, say, 3 to 4 weeks.
And it's a credible website you found?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. This has all the scientific data, all the studies. This is the place that I will refer people. Diet suggestions, menu plans, all kinds of things on there for folks.
Americans have this, you say, a bigger problem than it seems like some other countries, like Europe and all that?
Well, it's just that supposedly this was a European disease in the beginning. It's supposed to be Northern European, although the Scientific American researchers said they basically found it now on all continents and all races.
And again, the simple reason for that is more processed foods?
It may not be that simple, but it may be because we've been exporting our wheat all across the world for the past 50 years and whatever strains of wheat that we're using. I think it's, Americans eat more processed foods than people in other countries. I think certainly our whole economy is now developed into one that serves the fast food industry, and with the large agricultural giants, the agricultural subsidies, everything in our culture and economy drives people more into eating those foods more so than I would say they do in other countries.
When you've got a patient, I realize, as you said, this sounds like it's a highly subjective problem. Everybody has to be analyzed differently. Is there any way that you can give an idea of how soon somebody can figure this out if they have the problem? When will in other words, if it is, let's say, bread related, that they've got celiac disease and they stop eating bread, how soon does that take for them to feel better? Is it immediate?
3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks, so a month or so.
Now, the deeper inflammatory things, let's say somebody has an autoimmune or an arthritis issue or one of these deeper inflammatory diseases, that can usually take several months, up to 3 months. But in terms of if they're looking at gastrointestinal symptoms, even I've had allergy symptoms, a lot of airborne allergies, even people who've tested positive for mold and pollens and these things, I find are actually downstream effects from the gluten issue, and you take away their gluten, and then a year later they'll come into the office and say, this is the best allergy season I've had in 20 years, and I'm not even treating their allergies. So really, it depends on those.
Do you find the medical community is kind of getting more in tune with the aspect that one of the problems that could be totally unrelated to your stomach, so you think, is actually a part of that? Is there more of an education that's going on, do you think,
they're coming around.
How does that even happen? Because do you talk about these at your National Association meetings, or is this just through sharing information?
Well, you have to have at educational meetings, you need doctors who are looking into this, educating other doctors about the problem. I think the Scientific American article certainly helped in that respect.
Yeah, it makes me want to go back and look at that. Do you remember what edition that was?
August 2009 by Alessio Fasano at the University of Maryland. It's called Surprises from Celiac Disease. Okay. I have a copy. I have a drawer, and I have that article, copies of that in every patient room that I give to people, and I've mailed them to a couple local specialists too.
Okay, and if you want, celiac.com.
Yes, that would be a very good resource for anybody looking for more information, sometimes maybe more than they wanted to look for.
All right.
Everything is there.
And that's CELIAC, in case you're wondering how that's actually spelled when you go to the .com website. Dr. Joel, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Steve. Always a pleasure.
All right, and we'll be back with more Focus Today. Keep it tuned right here on the Dove.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. Compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market. But at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us. or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Good morning. Welcome back to Focus Today. I'm Steve Johnson. You know, there's all sorts of mother-in-law jokes. Maybe you've had a few yourself. Maybe you have been the focus of mother-in-law jokes. Well, what do you do to solve some of those problems of those kinds of relationships? Transforming Mother-in-Law, Daughter-in-Law Relationships is a book that Deb DeArmond has written. The book is called Related by Chance and Family by Choice. And she's an author, and she talked to our own Polina about this particular issue and how to resolve some of those conflicts.
The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships can be probably one of the hardest that the woman would have to face in her life. So how do we transition from being a mother to being a mother-in-law, and from being just a daughter to being a daughter-in-law? Today we're joined by Deb DeArmond, an author of a new book, Related by Chance, Family by Choice. And she will help us to dig into this problem and see how we can make this relationship work. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Polina.
I was going to read all your credentials, that you're an author and a speaker and a counselor and a teacher, but I think the biggest credential that you have is that you have 3 daughters-in-law. And on the back of the book, there is a picture of these 4 lovely ladies. And they're smiling. That doesn't happen very often. What's your secret?
Well, you know, that's the question that started this entire process. I was attending a retreat with 2 of my daughters-in-law, and a woman leaned across the table and asked me, "What's your secret?" And I looked up, startled. I didn't know her, and Polina, I don't think I would have told her my secrets if I did. But she was rooming with 2 of my daughters-in-law, and she said, "They love you, and I want to know how you did that." The secret is, it's really not a secret. The secret is that you have to make a determined choice in your life, that you're clear about what your role is as a mother of sons. You're never intended to be the most important woman in his life, because that spot God reserves for the woman he marries.
Wow. Well, you know, when you look at the situation, usually there are 2 women who love 1 man, and then you wonder why can't they just love him and be friends? Why is there so many difficulties? I'm sorry, I know that you said something about the mother. Is that just the mother's fault?
No, it's not. And our research, Polina, actually shows that there's enough blame to go around, that the daughters-in-law are often just as much to blame for the difficulty in the relationship. I think that there's a couple of things. Mothers and sons are close like fathers and daughters are close. And for an awful lot of mothers, the idea that there might be ever someone good enough to replace her is alarming to her, and it's tough for her to let go. But she's not being replaced, because let's face it, the mother-in-law in the group has seniority, but the daughter-in-law comes with some benefits that mother-in-law can't touch. The daughter-in-law, I think, has often fallen prey to sort of the culture of our media that villainizes mother-in-law. Think Jane Fonda in Monster-in-Law, or Marie Barone in Everybody Loves Raymond. And so when they're sort of looking one another up and down, they see one another as competition, when truthfully, they're just not. But they feel as though they're losing something. Mothers feel as though they're losing something when their son marries.
Are all of your daughters-in-law, are all of them Christian?
Yes, they are.
What if they're not? What if there is a religious disagreement in the family? What's the best way to handle that?
Well, I think that it's when you accept the Word of God as the authority on the lifestyle of the believer, you follow the Word, and it says that you love the unlovely, you love those who may despitefully use you. Take a look at Ruth and Naomi. They were of different faiths, different cultures, different lands, different worlds, and yet they found a way to support one another, to collaborate and not compete. And ultimately, Naomi's, obviously her faith and her culture won Ruth's heart. And I think that a lot of times we miss the opportunity to really be shining examples for Jesus when we don't engage in that kind of a relationship with a mother-in-law or daughter-in-law who doesn't share faith with us.
But when the opportunity arises, do you share faith? Is that something you need to do, or it's not your department?
You know, I have to be honest. I don't know that we have to consciously say, well, today I'm going to share faith with my mother-in-law. or my daughter-in-law. I think it's the way we live, Polina. So often people have said, there's something really different about you. Maybe a client of mine or a coworker I don't know well. What's different about your life? How have you created the relationships that you have across the board in your family? And the secret is, if you just live the word, people will ask you about your faith.
All right. Well, a lot of the times I think we start off kind of rough, and then I guess with age and time, wisdom comes. So what would be your advice to someone who did not necessarily have the best years in the beginning, and maybe some things happened, maybe the husband said some things about his wife to his mother that she keeps in the back of her mind, or how can you fix what's already been done, and who should make the first step?
I think you're right. I think sometimes the man in the middle feels kind of squeezed, and he may make remarks to his mother about his wife or his wife about his mother that are critical or that hurt, and they tend to stick around for a while. Those wounds last. Who should go first? I think that it could be either. I've really counseled women to sort of set it aside. Somebody's got to blink. Somebody's got to go first. Reach out and say, hey, we've not always had a relationship that's been positive, and it's made me sad, or I've missed a closer relationship with you. Would you be open to talking about it and maybe start fresh?
And if that doesn't work, is it ever okay to just walk away? I mean, do mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, do they have to be friends?
No, I don't think they have to be friends, but they are family. They're related through the man in the middle. I think there's a lot of push to make every possible effort to have a congenial family relationship. Grandchildren, extended family, everybody's involved, everybody's impacted. But there are times when I think that I've heard on both sides, either the mother-in-law or the daughter-in-law's behavior is so abusive that boundaries are important. And when that happens, you pray, you continue to pray, but you also have to protect your heart and your family.
Oh, that's so true. Well, let's remind our audience that we're talking to Deb DeArmond. She's the author of a wonderful book, a good tool for you that actually has a lot of practical things in it, related by chance, family by choice. And Deb, I know that you've done quite a bit of research for this book, and your daughters-in-law helped you with that. What did you find being some of the most common disagreements between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law?
Well, one of the things that we found is that there's really not much difference in the level of the quality of the relationship between women of faith and women who don't share faith. And I think one of the encouraging pieces we discovered is that 70% said that they would be willing to make the effort and take personal responsibility to help improve the relationship if they just knew how. Polina, that's really what this book is about. The girls and I didn't want to have a book that just said, here's what you should do. We have a real strong belief that knowing what you should do is great, but knowing how to do it, that's better. And so those tools and those action sheets, those are all designed to help put some legs to a commitment that says, I want to live with this woman as family.
What is the best way to become friends with your mother-in-law if you're long distance?
I think that it's like any long distance relationship. Communication is really important. Drop her an email a couple of times a week just to let her know that you're thinking about her. Send her a snail mail card. There's so much fun in going to the mailbox and finding a card that just says, thinking about you today. We talked to a couple of mother-in-law, daughter-in-laws who are long distance. They actually have a designated time once a week where they talk on the phone, they share prayer requests, and they pray together. And still one other, they're reading a book together, and they do this routinely. And then they have kind of their own private book club. They'll send one another emails about their impressions. They'll work through the discussion guide in a book. So there's lots of creative ways to do that.
Do you have any daughters?
I don't.
You don't? Okay. Well, because my next question was going to be how difficult it is. And maybe in your research you saw, you get daughters-in-law and then you have your own daughters. That dynamic is probably another book that you can write. But any advice on that?
I think the challenge always for women is that we like to have that first place relationship. I'm really clear. My girls, my daughters-in-law, they have moms. I'm not trying to take her place, but I'd love to be their backup mom. We are friends. We share some interests. We do some things together. But anytime that there's a competitive tone to the relationship, there's a problem. And so, again, take a look at Ruth and Naomi. They didn't compete. They completed one another and worked together.
As a mother-in-law, what hurts you the most?
That's a tough question, to be honest, Polina. I don't know that I've ever been deeply wounded by any of the daughters of my heart, which is how I phrase these girls. To be honest, my sons are likely to be less conscious or aware of my feelings or say something hurtful. I haven't really found anything, to be really frank. It hasn't happened.
And when they have conflict, do you tend to take anybody's side or you stay out of it?
Switzerland. I'm not taking anybody's side. And if the girls or the boys were to complain to either me or to my husband about their spouse, we always redirect them. Have you prayed about it? Have you talked with your spouse about it? If you haven't done those things, please don't talk to us about it. Once you know the details, it's hard not to know what you know. So we really just sort of requested, we'll be glad to sit and talk with the two of you, but we're not going to counsel either of you without the other one present.
All right, well, we only have a couple minutes left, and I'm going to use that time for myself. I recently got married, and I have a mother-in-law that I haven't spent that much time with. I've been married for 2 months, and I haven't had a chance to develop a relationship yet. So for a newlywed, what is your advice?
Find out the things that she's interested in. Discover what she enjoys. And hopefully she'll do the same thing. Share with her the things you love. I have a daughter-in-law who loves to bake, and I'm not much good at it. And so for family gatherings and holidays, I invite Sarah to come. We split up the chores. I help her. I'm her sous chef, but she really does the baking. It's something we enjoy together. I have a daughter who loves to run. She competes in marathons. Didn't know anything about marathons, but I got interested. I encouraged her. I've learned a little bit about the world of running. And my third daughter-in-law and I, we share career. We both do development for leaders, training and development and coaching. And when she was new, just out of graduate school, I was able to help get her some contacts. So if you express interest in the things, Polina, that she's interested in, it says you're important. I'm interested in you, and I want relationship with you.
You know, your girls are blessed. I can see the love in your eyes for them, and I know they love you sincerely, and so I'm sure they're thankful. But one thing I wanted to say, probably from just my experience, is that being thankful, no matter how good or bad your mother-in-law is or your daughter-in-law is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's important for a daughter-in-law to remember that the woman raised the man of her dreams, and if for no other reason, she deserves some acknowledgement and always respect according to the word. And it's important for mothers-in-law to remember, as I said to my daughter-in-law Heather at her baby shower recently when she was expecting a son, don't ever forget, God never intended for you to be the most important woman in his life. I said, just as the Lord selected you for my son, someday he'll select a woman for your son. Wow. And that's a sobering reminder for daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law both.
Well, thank you, Deb, for your reminders to us today. Again, the book is titled Related by Choice, Family. Oh, I'm sorry, I messed it up. Related by Chance, Family by Choice. Make sure you check it out. Deb, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Polina.
All right, and coming up in just a few minutes, we've got some more special guests. You may know about Joni and Friends. I don't think you probably know of all the things that they're doing, plus a special event that is coming up in Oregon. That'll be coming up on our next segment here on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back to Focus Today. We've got some special guests. You know, a little while ago we had Joni Erickson-Tada on Focus Today, and now we have some of the people from her organization here in Oregon. An area director, Brent Olstad, is here with Joni and Friends for Southern Oregon. Nice to have you here. So is Lorraine Peterson, a board member. And, you know, I am amazed, first of all, by how many programs you have. I didn't realize there were so many. I was familiar with Wheels for the World, which is kind of collecting wheelchairs for people throughout the globe, which, I mean, when you think of having to move a physical wheelchair, that's quite a logistic difficulty. But that's been going on for years now, hasn't it?
It's been going on for years.
Okay. Now, you've also got several other programs that I want to talk about, because I'm fascinated with how you guys have expanded over my infant knowledge of all the things you are doing with Joni and Friends. But you've got a special fundraising celebration coming up, don't you? Tell us a little bit. It's called Press On.
It's called Press On, and it's on Friday, November 8th at 7 o'clock at FBC, First Baptist Church, 649 Crater Lake Avenue. And it's a celebration because we are celebrating the lives of families affected by disability, and also celebrating the ministry of Joni and Friends.
So what's the night going to be like? This is an evening event?
It's an evening event, and we have two fantastic, outstanding acts, entertainment coming. The first is Jill and Daryl. They're a circus act. Jill has performed with Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, and she is an accomplished clown. And so she does stilts, hoops, all kinds of body comedy type of things. And her husband is an accomplished musician. And my son and I also are playing in the band, backing them up. And we also have a bass player. And so they're just going to do about 30 minutes of just fantastic family fun entertainment. And then the second part of the evening will be the Rogue Valley Gospel Group. And my son and I play in that group as well. And it's a group of musicians across the valley. They all serve in their churches and various musical positions, but we get together and do black gospel, R&B, funk, blues type of music, and it's the kind of music where you just can't sit still. You have to get up and move around. So,
and I've been privileged to hear them perform several times, and it's just a phenomenal act, and people will really, really enjoy it. I highly encourage people to come out.
Yeah, well, especially for the first part, I've never heard of a musician backup act for a clown.
Yes. Yeah, it's
different right there.
That's great. It's so much fun. And sometimes you get lost because you're watching her do her hoops and you're going, oh, I got to concentrate on my music, but it's...
So for musicians, it's distracting.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Well, let's, and that'll be, let's give the details. That'll be coming up Friday, November 8th at 7 p.m. at FBC, 649 Crater Lake Avenue. And I suppose if they go to your website, they can find out more. Right?
Yes, and you can also find us on Facebook. That's probably the best way to do it. Just look for Joni and Friends Southern Oregon on Facebook.
Joni and Friends Southern Oregon.
That's correct, yes.
Get on that.
It's free, and we will be asking for money, but we want people to come in, even if they can't give, because
it's a fundraiser for Joni and Friends, right?
It is.
For your chapter.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the extensive aspect that I was unaware of, but after this show, I will not be, of the things you do. Wheels for the World is the first one, and if you haven't heard of that, you're collecting wheelchairs restored by inmates in the United States, right? So they could be trashed out, and they're fixing them up so they're usable.
That's right.
And how vast do these get sent out? To anywhere in the world, or do you focus on specific
there are specific countries that they focus on, but it is all over the world. South America, Cuba, Asia, China, Africa, Europe.
Poland.
I've been to Poland 5 times, and Romania, Ukraine.
And helping to see how
distribute
these
the
are distributed?
wheelchairs. Yes,
really?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how many wheelchairs have been distributed?
The last I heard, there was close to 40,000.
Wow.
Somewhere in there, 50,000.
And this has been going on how long?
About 10 years, I believe.
Wow. Yes. Okay, let's just talk about some of the others. One is called Come Feel What I Feel. This is some sort of a workshop awareness thing. What's this about?
We go to local churches, and we have 12 stations that allow people to experience just a little bit what it might be like to have a disability. So
blindness or
yes, and we
paralyzed.
Put big gloves on people and have them try to button clothes, try to write using a mirror so it's backwards, so you can experience a little bit of what dyslexia is like.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's just an interactive experience.
So people can relate more to disabilities in general.
Right. And the thing I want to interject is that churches, groups can take this kit basically and present it themselves. We don't need to be there to do it.
You know, I would think this would be great for homeschool kids too as well.
Yeah, we've done a number of homeschool groups with this and a number of churches.
And you've got On a Roll for Jesus, which is also a disability awareness program.
Yes, and that's designed mainly for children, but they can incorporate that with like their VBS program, and it focuses on Wheels for the World and also Family Retreat. There's one specific.
Oh, the family retreat. That's a big thing that they have every year.
It is.
One location. Right?
No,
multiple?
There's multiple locations. There's probably, I don't remember, but about 15 different retreats across the United States.
Okay.
We host one at Twin Rocks Friends Camp above Tillamook. This last August was our 4th year that we were able to do that.
I know that on some of Johnny's shows, she'll be there at one of these friends camps type and kind of follow the stories, and it's just it's amazing.
It is.
Really, I mean, it's powerful.
It's transformational for the families who attend. It's really amazing.
Not just the people, but the families, the related families. Yeah, that's great. Now, special delivery is also kind of to help a specific group of people that are hospitalized. Right.
Yeah, and it's designed for people that are like shut-ins. But we also have expanded it to a family that has received a new diagnosis, like they have a child born with a disability.
So what happens? How do you work with them?
So what we do is we have a number of things that we can give them, age-appropriate books, even some toys, things like that. And we also include some a Bible, if possible, or anything to encourage the family, to let them know that we're here to support them. And then the other thing we try to do is just try to get a church to come alongside them. So we try to get the church to bring the special delivery to the family.
I see. So you're kind of helping the church that wants to assist in some way, and you've got the tools for that. Oh, that's cool. Now it's a ways away, Valentine's Day, but you've got a program called Love Notes. It relates to that, right?
This is a great opportunity for children to serve. What we do is we collect Valentines who are made by kids or anybody throughout the Rogue Valley, and then we send those Valentines to children affected by disability. So we have many families here within the Rogue Valley, and last year we collected about 4,000 Valentines.
Wow. Just here in this area?
Just here in this area. So we had so many, we sent them to some of the children who attended the family retreat that we hosted up at Twin Rocks. It's just a way when kids get an envelope filled with hundreds of Valentines to know that they're loved.
Yeah. Well, boy, you have so many resources going on here that assist in that way. Let's get back to when you have the retreats. Are those mostly in the summer that you have those?
Yes.
And are those for like a week long?
They're a week long. They start on Monday and end on Friday. And volunteers, we call them short-term missionaries, they come a day early. They come on a Sunday, and we train them for a day and a half, and so that they're ready to serve and minister.
Now, I'm wondering, are some people who go to those retreats with a disabled family member, is this sometimes the first time they're actually introduced to Joni and Friends and the whole program? Because I can see where a lot of this is helping out, but this is where the family actually gets involved in this particular case. So I suppose once they go there, they probably want to come back every year, I would think. Right? That may be the biggest problem you have, or everybody wanting to return back.
Right. We filled up, I think, in February last year, so people need to reserve early.
February for like June or July or something?
Yeah, for August.
And where is there one place where they have it in the Oregon? Is it in Oregon itself?
Yes, it's Twin Rocks Friends Camp, right above Tillamook. 14 miles north. Right on the coast.
Good. Okay. Well, we're kind of running out of time, but I do want to mention this. The Press On fundraising celebration is Friday, November 8th, 7 p.m., and it's at FBC on 649 Crater Lake Avenue. You say the best place to get information is from the Facebook page, right?
It would be, yes.
So that would be Joni and Friends
Southern Oregon
on Facebook. Okay, that's good. And unusual with circus background, you're going to be a musician. We'll have to look for you and your son.
That's right.
What do you play?
I play keyboards.
Keyboards, okay, all of that.
Drums.
And this is an evening event at 7 p.m. And you can find out more about what Joni and Friends is all about as well. So that sounds pretty cool. And the Rogue Valley Gospel Group will be there as well. Great. Our guests, Lorraine Peterson and also Brent Olstad with Joni and Friends. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
All right. Thanks for joining us today on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.